Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we are talking about AMC pressuring shorts, why the shorts are screwed, the real shares needed, and many more in this video. First, we're taking a look at this. So this is the big news coming out of AMC today, and it's essentially the proposal that they want to get through. Now, bear in mind, what I'm about to say has not yet been approved. It is for a stockholder meeting, so everyone has the ability to vote for this, but this is what they're proposing. So once again, it has not yet gone through. Essentially, the biggest things that they want to do is increasing authorized shares, as this proposal does not automatically dilute existing shareholders. It simply means AMC would have the ability to issue up to 1.1 billion share in the future instead of the current 550 million cap. And that's one of the biggest things that they want to do, which is increasing the number of authorized shares from 550 million to 1.1 billion shares. And that's the big thing. Now, once again, I want to highlight this. It has not yet gone through. This is for a vote from the shareholders, but this is what we are looking at. Now, a few things to firstly understand from this is that authorized shares is very different. We have to understand, as stated here on the AMC proxy page 25, we estimate that between 66.9 million and 122.6 million shares of common stock will be reserved for issuance upon exchange of the new exchangeable note. Authorizing shares is different from issuing shares. So the shares that we are likely to see being issued out is somewhere between 66.9 to 122.6 million. When you take a look at the number here of going up to 1.1 billion, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden there will be 550 million more shares. It's the ability for them to issue up to 550 million more shares. And so this is something that we've talked about in the past for AMC. And I definitely think that this is obviously bringing attention from the shareholders for the apes as well, because of what this means. Now, when you take a look at some of the opinions of the others, you can see authorizing more shares reduce risk for AMC and allows for more flexibility, increasing company value. Scarecrows claiming it will kill share price assumes that AMC market cap will stay at the 2019 level when AMC was on the verge of bankruptcy. And so you have to realize that right now this situation is very different from when AMC did it in the past. It's also talking about how and what this will bring for AMC, because you can see that the general consensus right now from the apes is that people are wanting this to go through. You can see another example. I'll be voting yes with my 38,000 shares of AMC. Decreasing debt and interest puts additional strains on shorts and fast. The shorts are screwed and this just tightens the grip. I believe it's already priced in due to manipulation, so it's a go for me. So when we look at this, we have to look at what it can do and some examples in the past. Firstly, what this will allow us to do is that obviously with the issuance of new shares, it will raise more money for AMC. And when it raises more money, AMC has the ability to do multiple things. Firstly, we can see that it can pay off its debt. We've already seen how AMC has been tackling their debt problems. We've seen how they've restructured. We've seen how they're paying off. And so this will just be another speed up in the process of them paying off the debt. But also is that if they were able to raise more cash by issuing out more shares, then not only is paying off debt one thing, but more investment, whether it's on investments like HYMC, whether it's investments in the current infrastructure, or the share buybacks that they can do, which then just kind of negates this whole thing, and the dividend issuance that they can obviously do. So there are multiple things that AMC has the ability to have and do when they are able to raise money. One of the biggest examples we've always given is the difference between AMC and GME has always been that AMC has a working operation, their infrastructure extremely good, whereas for GME, whilst they don't have an operating system like AMC in terms of how their business is operated, but because they have billions on hand, they are able to make investments. So both parties are all doing well, but in their own separate ways. Now we've said if AMC were to have the same things that GME does, so not only do they have a working and operating business structure, but also hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of cash on hand, then that will put them at the best position possible. And so this is obviously what we've been talking about, and we could be potentially seeing this happen. Now, in terms of taking a look at the past, one of the biggest things that I've always talked about, and for some it was a regret. Now, this has already happened in the past, so this isn't now to obviously point fingers at anyone or blame people, but when AMC, and you guys can take a look at the market chart for the market cap chart for AMC, when AMC was at its extreme highs of market cap, Adam Aaron back then had already proposed the issuance of shares, and this would have allowed them to raise a lot of cash, but it was turned down by the stockholders. So the majority vote was that no, they didn't want more shares to be issued out. And we've talked about how you can see that for their argument was that they didn't want to see the dilution of shares, but afterwards people have realized that this actually indeed would have been very beneficial for AMC because they would have raised a lot of money. And one of the examples you can look at is GME, and you can see how they are able to operate and still survive even though their business structure is nowhere near as mature as AMC, but because they have so much cash, they are still able to survive. And so now we're at this crossroad again, and people obviously have the choice. And so I'm not here to tell you guys that you have to vote yes or you have to vote no. I'm only giving out the opinions that I have, the opinions of other people. We're taking a look at some of the things that has happened in the past, but it is for you to, of course, do your own due diligence and make your own decision. As always, none of this is ever financial advice, so do take what I say with a grain of salt. Make sure to do your own due diligence and research. Now, taking a look at on top of everything that's going on, so now that we have AMC pressuring the shorts because they have always tried to put us down so we can't get cash, we also have the GME warrant. You can see fuse officially lit. GME just dropped warrants like confetti, 1 for every 10 shares. Shorts gotta prove their shares are real now, not make-believe monopoly stock. DTCC is about to find out who's been renting oxygen instead of owning trees. And so one of the things we talked about is how recently we've seen brokers struggling, and we can take a look at some more examples before we go further into this, which is firstly, institution is still adding GME, ownership has increased over 100% year on year. Then we can see was that during the stock warrant day, Robinhood was down. How much you want to bet that this is a Jan 2021 moment all over again? They probably can't get enough warrants or having another massive margin call from the NSCC again. Except this time, instead of showing you by removing the buy button, they're just taking away everyone's ability to log in order to blame it on technical difficulties. So going back to what we've said here, warrants has been issued out. I personally have received mine. If you have received yours, make sure to comment down below. But what this has done is obviously it caused a problem for so many brokers, because for those of these brokers who had to prove that they have shares, that they had to prove that it matched their books and find the warrants, it obviously would have caused difficulties. Now, the reason why I talked about the institutional ownership as well is that, remember, these warrants aren't just given out to the retail. They're of course given to anyone who holds shares of GME. And so if we're seeing institutional ownership also going up, it would have also meant that once we knew that the demand for these warrants was extremely high, they had to actually locate these shares. And so if they were struggling to do so, just like we've seen how certain brokers are going down, meaning, and very likely because they couldn't find enough warrants or they were getting a margin call, then we know why the situation is bad for these short sellers and these brokers. Remember, we've seen, and we've talked about this, every time something happens with AMC or GME, you always see glitches happen. And we've talked about this multiple times. When you see a certain broker getting margin called, you're suddenly seeing the share price of AMC change in the back end. You're suddenly seeing the market cap change. You're suddenly seeing the outstanding shares change for AMC or GME. And we've talked about this multiple times. We've shown data of multiple times. And now, as we're seeing these GameStop warrants, which we've already warned beforehand was going to cause stress for brokers, was going to cause stress for the shorts, suddenly we're seeing these brokers down. And just like we've seen with the history with Robinhood and knowing how much margin was at hand, was at risk with AMC, with GME, it's not a surprise that it's happening right now. And so we have to realize this and understand that we are pressuring the short sellers, whether it's with the warrant, whether it's the AMC proposal. And right now, short sellers are definitely panicking as they're trying to find ways to obviously go and prevent this. You can see another example which is GameStop and AMC all over again. Schwab halted only buy orders in Genius Group today, just before news broke out of the default in the 750 million RICO market manipulation case. So once again, you're seeing how the same things are happening over and over again. But we talked about this. Short sellers are not in a good position. Anyone who tells me that they think that short sellers are making hundreds of millions of dollars, I beg to differ. Because with what we are seeing, they're clearly not doing well. As always, none of this financial advice. Do take our grain of salt. Make sure to do your own due diligence and research. And I'll catch you guys next time.